The stars shimmered above, their cold light casting an eerie glow over the alien planet. Zyra, the mighty and feared warlord of the Call, stood in front of the human, me, her gaze unwavering and demanding. I, a simple mechanic from Earth, had never imagined I'd be on an alien planet, caught in a galactic struggle, much less caught in her strange, calculating eyes. But here I was, and the rules were clear. You've seen me unclothed human. Zyra's voice was like a hiss, the words sharp and edged with an unmistakable sense of power. Now, you must marry me or they'll kill us both. My heart raced as I processed her words. I had been working in the mechanics bay of the starship when she stormed in, furious and desperate. She was a warlord, the last of her kind, and she needed a mate, someone to unite her species. But it wasn't just a marriage proposal. It was a demand. If I refused, she would be executed. If I accepted, I would be forced into a bond that would affect not just her world, but mine as well. I tried to think quickly. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. She wasn't just an alien. She was a leader, a symbol of power and strength. And I was a human, an insignificant human by her standards. But the fate of two worlds now rested on the choice between a forced marriage and death. I swallowed hard, standing taller than I ever had before. I don't have much choice, do I? Zyra's eyes flashed with something. Anger, fear, perhaps even a trace of hope. No, you don't. I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me, heavier than any tool I had ever lifted in the ship's engine bay. A forced marriage to a warlord of another species wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I woke up this morning. Hell, I hadn't even thought I'd be alive by the end of the day. Yet here I was, standing in front of a towering alien warlord with a demand I couldn't ignore. Zyra stepped closer, her cold gaze never leaving mine. I noticed the sharp ridges along her skin, the subtle glow beneath her scales. She was breathtaking in her own way, intimidating in the calm authority that flowed from her. She was a warrior, built for survival, and this entire universe of hers seemed to hinge on my decision. Do you know what they will do to us if I fail? Zyra's voice lowered, the challenge gone, replaced by something almost vulnerable. The Call will never forgive me. They'll hunt me down and destroy everything I've worked for. And they'll destroy you too, for simply being human. I tried to breathe through the panic threatening to choke me. My mind raced. The Call, whoever they were, sounded like a force I didn't want to cross. But what was my other option? Run? Refuse? That would seal our fates, without question. I wasn't sure how I could protect myself or her, but running wasn't in me. Then we fight. I said, the words feeling more right than I had expected. We fight and we win together. Zyra studied me, her expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought she might laugh. But instead, she nodded, a small spark of something like respect in her eyes. You are brave, she said quietly, but we are far from safe. I could feel the tension crackling in the air as Zyra's words hung heavy between us. We are far from safe, she said, as if warning me, but also challenging me to prove otherwise. The weight of her gaze didn't relent, and I could see the flicker of uncertainty buried deep beneath her hardened exterior. She was used to control, to leading her people in battles that could determine the fate of entire star systems. And here I was, a human mechanic, with no real idea of how I was supposed to contribute to her war. I swallowed, trying to steady my racing thoughts. What exactly are they going to do if we refuse this marriage? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. It seemed like a stupid question, one I already knew the answer to, but somehow I needed to hear her say it. Zyra's eyes narrowed, the cold fury returning. The Call did not tolerate failure. The bond between a leader and their mate is sacred, a symbol of unity, strength, and survival. Without it, I'm nothing to them. And if I don't marry you, they'll kill us both in front of the entire galaxy. They'll make an example of us. Her voice hardened, almost like she was trying to steel herself against the truth. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my chest. This wasn't just some weird alien custom. It was a matter of life and death, not just for me, but for Zyra as well. The thought of dying, or worse, having to watch her die, was unbearable. But what could I do? I wasn't a soldier, a diplomat, or even someone important. I was just a man caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But my fear was quickly replaced with something else, a sense of determination, of something more than just survival. I wasn't going to let this end in tragedy, not without a fight. The silence between us stretched thick and heavy. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on both of us. Zyra's eyes remained locked on mine, daring me to back down to show fear, but I refused to give her that satisfaction. Instead, I squared my shoulders, the adrenaline pumping through my veins, filling me with a strange sense of resolve. "Okay," I said, my voice firm despite the storm raging in my chest. "If this is what it takes to survive, then we'll make it work. But I need to know what I'm up against. Who exactly are these Kal, and what makes them so dangerous?" Zyra seemed to consider my question, her sharp features softening ever so slightly as she regarded me. It was almost as if she was impressed by my willingness to jump into the fire without knowing what it would cost. "The Kal are not like you, human," she said slowly. "They are conquerors born of war. Our race has ruled over countless systems for eons, and they would see me dead before they let me fail. They value strength above all else, and without the bond, I am nothing but a weak leader." Her words were chilling. I knew she wasn't exaggerating. I'd seen enough of this galaxy to understand that power was everything. In a world where strength dictated your place in the universe, a failure like hers could destroy everything she had built. So this marriage, I started trying to wrap my head around it. Is it a real marriage, or is it just for show? Zyra's lips curled into a faint, wry smile. "It is as real as the life we now share, human. There is no just for show in this galaxy, not when your life hangs by a thread." That was a reality I wasn't ready to face, but there was no turning back now. We were in this together, and together we'd survive. The weight of her words settled over me like a thick, suffocating fog. A real marriage. No half measures, no pretending. This wasn't just some political arrangement. It was about survival. I could feel the pulse of that truth in my bones. This wasn't a game. If I hesitated, if I showed any sign of weakness, it would be the end of us both. The call would tear us apart, and Zyra, she'd lose everything. I steadied my breath, trying to push past the panic rising in my throat. This wasn't a life I had ever envisioned. Marrying an alien warlord? Defying an entire race of conquerors who wouldn't hesitate to wipe us out? No, I hadn't signed up for this. But I had no choice now. So what do we do next? I asked, trying to steady my voice. My words fell hollow, almost too calm. But the reality was too much to comprehend. Every step I took from here would be a leap into the unknown. I could only hope that my survival instincts, the same ones that kept me alive as a mechanic, would serve me well now. Zyra's gaze softened, but there was still that edge to it, the sharpness that made her a leader. "We prepare," she said. "We have to make the call believe this union is real. The bond must be visible to them, undeniable. Only then will they leave us in peace. If they even suspect weakness, they will destroy us." My heart sank at the thought. How do we even begin? I asked. Zyra stepped closer, her eyes locking onto mine with an intensity one couldn't ignore. "We will fight this together. Human. Every moment from here on out is a battle we cannot afford to lose." The fire in her eyes was a silent promise, one I had no choice but to accept. There was no turning back now. As the reality of the situation sank in, I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. Every step we took from here on out had to be calculated. Every word, every action, every glance. One wrong move, and the call would sense our weakness. And if that happened, we would both be dead. Zyra didn't wait for me to process the full magnitude of what we were facing. She moved with purpose, a warrior on a mission, and I had no choice but to follow. "We need to gather allies," she said, her voice steady, commanding. "I'll speak with my people, but you—" She paused, looking me over with that same calculating gaze. "You must prove yourself worthy of this union. The call respects strength. You have none. Yet." I flinched at her bluntness, but there was truth in her words. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't even a soldier. I had no place in this world of power and survival. But if I was to live, if I was to stand a chance beside her, I had to adapt. I had to become more than just a human mechanic. I had to fight. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Zyra nodded, seeming satisfied with my answer. "Then come with me. We train." The days that followed were a blur of motion, adrenaline, and constant preparation. Zyra taught me everything she could: how to stand, how to move, how to hold my ground against attackers, and most importantly, how to fight like a warrior. At first, it was frustrating. My body wasn't used to this kind of movement, this kind of brutality. I stumbled, fell, and got bruised more times than I could count. But Zyra was relentless. She never gave me a moment of pity. She pushed me harder than I thought I could bear, and at times, I hated her for it. But slowly, painfully, I began to change. I could feel the shift in myself, the strength growing where there was none before. I wasn't just a mechanic anymore. I was becoming something else, something that could survive in her world. Zyra wasn't easy on me, but in her own strange way, she was teaching me how to live. And as much as I resented the situation, I knew that without her, I wouldn't have stood a chance. I couldn't afford to fail. Not for her, not for me, and certainly not for the call. The clock was ticking, and the pressure was rising. There was no going back. The final days before the call's arrival were a blur of exhaustion and dread. My body ached from the brutal training Zyra had put me through, but something in me had shifted. I had gone from a human mechanic with no real skills to something more, something dangerous. Whether or not it would be enough remained to be seen. Zyra's determination had become infectious. She was no longer just a warrior. She had become a part of my every thought, every action. I understood now why she had been so relentless with me. Her strength was what kept her alive in a galaxy that didn't care for weakness, and if I was to stand beside her, I had to be just as strong. The day the call arrived was the day I realized just how much this galaxy had changed me. Their ships descended from the sky like dark clouds, their presence suffocating and oppressive. I stood beside Zyra, my back straight, my hands steady, despite the fear churning in my stomach. She didn't look at me, but I could feel the weight of her expectation. When the call leaders stepped off their ships, their massive forms towering above us, I couldn't help but feel small. They were everything Zyra had warned me about: powerful, intimidating, and cold. But there was no fear in Zyra's stance. She stood tall, her eyes locked onto theirs with a challenge that could burn through stone. "This is my mate," she declared, her voice echoing across the vast expanse of the landing bay. "And we are united. Together, we will lead the call to victory." The call looked at us, their eyes scanning us with suspicion. But when they saw no sign of weakness, only resolve, they gave a slow nod. In that moment, I realized something profound. This was not just about survival. This was about proving humanity's place in a galaxy that had never truly seen us as anything more than insignificant. We were here to stay. Together, we would fight for our future.